Hello, my name is Infazero, and do we have something to talk about today? So, before I get into anything in this video, I just want to say that I'm not using a script this time. I'm just using a outline with a bunch of bullet points, so, you know, be a little more informal, a little more casual. That's foreshadowing for later. Anyways, let's get into it. So, the Undertale Deltarune Winter 2024 newsletter dropped a few days ago, 2 days ago, as of me recording this. It was very fun, they showed off a lot of cool stuff, but they did this Valentine's thing. It seemed, just normal and fun, but then I found out about this mystery letter. So, at least one person got it, at Sarisu on Twitter. I can't find anyone else reporting getting it, and judging from her thread where, she was asking if other people got it, it seems like she is the only person so far who has reported getting it, and might be the only one. We don't know. But this letter has already been the subject of much discussion and speculation, so I would like to go over it today, and the different interpretations of it than people have been throwing around and everything. But before we get into all that, let's go over the letter itself. So, there were a little less than 50 total Valentines released. I don't remember the exact number. Basically, each person would get 3 random Valentines from the characters of Undertale and Deltarune in their newsletter. Though you could just go to the archive of the newsletter to, refresh it over and over again and just keep randomizing them. But like I said before, it seems like for now, only one person got this mystery letter in their newsletter. It is far longer than all the others, and it isn't attributed to a specific character. There's another one that isn't attributed to a specific character, but it seems like from context it's probably Alfie's. And also, it's a very silly one. This one, again, is very long, very different, really doesn't have anything to do with Valentine's Day, and it is very, very interesting. So we were able to get the link to the image of the letter itself, which is how I found out about it. Someone sent it to me. And it has been proved that yes, this is a real thing, because the link is on the actual, Fangamer website, and also, the person who got it, has forwarded the email to other people, so it is real. So, let's read the letter, shall we? It's a strange letter. It's more or less completely illegible, but if you squint your eyes and you squint your heart, for some reason you feel you could understand it. Well, Happy New Year. Or was it the old year? Well, in any case, how is Deltarune? As you are waiting patiently, the time is going around. There was even a rumor of Valentine's Day. How absurd. Every day is a day of love, if only you believe it so. Do you believe it so? So, the purpose of the message. I want to help. Yes, there was someone I wanted to help. I seem to have forgotten who. Yes, it's quite ironic, but I seem to have forgotten. Was it myself? No. Well, perhaps. Regardless, when I see them, I'm certain I will know it straight away. I never forget someone I don't remember. Will you help me? You are very odd, responding out loud to a letter. But you seem reliable. I will be counting on you. Now, put on your coat and wash your face. Or put on your face and wash your coat. Not necessarily in that order. Or in any order at all. Goodbye. There was a sound like something walking away, and the letter was gone. Now, I will freely admit that as soon as I saw this letter, I, like many others, including the person who actually got this in their newsletter, immediately assumed it was written by Gaster. And that assumption only increased when, only about 10 minutes after I was made aware of this letter, it disappeared. The page updated so that it was just a blank Valentine template. It was just gone. Luckily, a single person had already preserved it on the Wayback Machine, so we still have it. Now, the assumption that this came from Gaster is in no way unfounded, as there is a lot here that connects back to him. However, it's not as straightforward as I first assumed, and the longer I've thought about it, the more I'm convinced that this isn't actually Gaster. But let's go over everything that ties this letter to Gaster first. So, right off the bat, the letter is described as strange and more or less completely illegible. It being illegible would line up with wingdings, although it's possible that just like the blueprints in Sans' lab, they could also technically just be bad handwriting or some kind of, I don't know, other odd symbols, though. I mean, wingdings are kind of the only odd symbols we have, so... The more or less phrasing, the more or less completely legible, does kind of imply that you'd be able to read at least a little bit of it, which wouldn't really make sense if it was wingdings. However, I would argue that the emphasis placed on us having to, squint our eyes and squint our heart, and for some reason you were able to read it, it feels very, supernatural the way we're able to read this, not just us trying to parse bad handwriting, although, again, it could always just be that. It's just vague enough. The speaker says that there was someone that they wanted to help, but they have forgotten them. This could line up with the mysterious person helping Spamton on the phone, who suddenly abandoned him for seemingly no reason, and this mysterious person, of course, is often assumed to be Gaster. The speaker calls it ironic that they've forgotten this person, and immediately ponders if the person that they forgot is themselves. Both of these statements, very much evoke Gaster and how he was possibly forgotten. I say possibly because I want to remind everyone that has never actually been confirmed. It's just inferred because of Goner Kid's dialogue and whatnot, but we do not know actually for sure if Gaster was forgotten when he got shattered and everything. However, this statement could also be considered ironic because, whoever they forgot was a very memorable and, unique person, someone that you wouldn't think you would forget. Near the end, the speaker asks for our help, which does line up with how Gaster has asked for our help previously in the Chapter 1 announcement tweets. However, the phrasing of the letter does kind of feel like the speaker has not asked for our help before. They say stuff like, "You seem reliable." That to me reads as I have not asked you to do something before. I don't know whether or not you are reliable, but you seem reliable. That's just how that reads to me, though. So, at wandydoodles on Twitter made the connection between these odd lines, about putting our coats on and washing our faces and everything, with the chair page from the Spamton sweepstakes. There's some kind of cloth laid over the chair. That could be a coat. And when you click on it, it will sometimes flash, the pair of eyes at you and play the little audio of laughter, which is called face.ogg, which connects to the face part. That part might be a stretch, but if true, it would only strengthen the connections to Gaster because, that page is the one whose title reads, "But what if it could get darker than dark?" And then, of course, the letter vanishing without a trace shortly after appearing does very much line up with Gaster's habit of suddenly disappearing. I guess that could just be a coincidence, and it was just supposed to make it feel more mysterious in that sense, in a general sense, but I feel like it was more intentional than that. Now, all of that could be explained away by other means, but the biggest indicator for me that this has to have something to do with Gaster is this line. How is Deltarune? And before you say anything about the symbol from Undertale, no, they're clearly referring to Deltarune the game. The phrasing wouldn't make sense otherwise, and they also reference us waiting for it. According to our current understanding of things, at least, Gaster is the only person who should know about that. The speaker is also specifically asking how it is. They're asking for our feedback, which ties back into survey program and everything. You could argue that if this is someone who has come into contact with Gaster, then they could just know about the game from him. I mean, I don't know, maybe Jevil and Spamton also knew that, it was called Deltarune and it just never came up. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing with the secret bosses is that they have this, they seem to have some kind of forbidden knowledge and that they know that the world is a game or that there's more out of it or whatever. So, that's definitely possible. But I don't know. The specific reference to Deltarune seems like a very Gaster specific thing to say, and I'll get more into that later. Now, if that were it, then I would absolutely just say it's Gaster, cut and dry. But the problem comes with the Japanese version of this letter. Now, I can't read Japanese myself, so all my information on this comes from @RationalRash's thread on Twitter. According to them, the Japanese version of the letter uses hiragana, not the stilted katakana that Gaster has used in previous dialogue of his. The letter is also written in very casual Japanese, while Gaster usually speaks extremely formally in Japanese. So, while this could certainly be Gaster himself, there is a huge inconsistency in the way that he speaks in this letter and in all the other dialogue from him that we have. As Rational Rash points out, Gaster's use of stilted katakana is a very odd and notable thing about his speech in Japanese, so it doesn't seem like something that would just completely change when he talks more casually. It's also important to keep in mind that the Japanese version is meant to get across the same information as the original English version. It wouldn't make sense if the English version pointed us to Gaster, but the Japanese version didn't. Then Japanese fans wouldn't get the same information, which seems unlikely. Toby works very closely with the translation team, and this letter is clearly, special or important in some way, so I highly doubt that the speaking style is different for just no reason. I will also admit that even in English, this letter doesn't really line up with how we've seen Gaster talk previously. Like, even in English, it comes across as more casual than other Gaster dialogue that we've gotten. And also, like, the sentences are longer, there's a lot less, scientific phrasing and stuff. It does feel more casual, and there's no calling cards like very, very, or darker yet darker, so, No matter who this is, though, it's gotta be someone at least related to Gaster in some way, due to the mention of Deltarune itself. Now, before we get to other candidates, there are a few other ideas of how it could be Gaster, while not ignoring this inconsistency with the speech. The first idea I've seen is that this could be from Gaster before he got shattered across time and space, or banished to the depths, or whatever. But this idea really doesn't make much sense, because it'd mean that entry 17 was written after he got shattered, which seems highly unlikely, and even if you go the route of Deltarune Gaster being a different Gaster than the one from Undertale, which, I do think is very possible, it still doesn't line up with how he's spoken in Deltarune so far, both in the game itself and on Twitter, so that doesn't really, line up. The idea I think is much more possible is that this is a different piece of Gaster speaking. People tend to forget, but according to the Gaster followers in Undertale, when he was shattered across time and space, he was literally shattered into multiple pieces. One of the Gaster followers even claims to have one of these pieces in their hand. So perhaps this letter was written by a different piece of Gaster than we've previously interacted with, one who does speak more casually and normally. As @CarlyRayJepsans on Twitter points out in their thread on this topic, Gaster's whole meta-existence and dynamic with us is something that is very tied to specifically him, and, has been built up for many, many years, since even before Undertale was released with, Deltarune.com and the wingdings on it and stuff. It would make much more sense that this is him, rather than suddenly introducing a new character who's also aware of Deltarune as a game and us and everything. They also put forward the idea that the sort of demeanor of the speaker behind this letter seems to line up more with the man hiding behind the trees and giving us eggs and everything, more than the Gaster that we are familiar with. The idea of there being, this odd, formal speaking Gaster who's running the Deltarune program, and then a different, more happy and casual kind of piece of Gaster doing all the egg stuff. I mean, considering that Gaster being split into multiple pieces is one of the few concrete things that we for sure know about him, and of course another him and all that, I'd say that this is very possible. Personally, I think that having multiple Gasters running around within Deltarune might get a little convoluted and detract from him as a character, but it is an established part of his character that he is in multiple pieces, and I trust Toby to handle that in a way that would feel fulfilling. So, now that we've gone over all the different flavors of Gaster, let's talk about some other candidates for who this mysterious speaker could be. We've definitely got some other suspects, but the problem is that we know so little about all of them that it's hard to distinguish them from each other, so I'm just gonna kind of lump them all together. So we've got Mike, Tenna, the Chapter 3 secret boss, and the friend that we see in the basement of Queen's Mansion. Again, we know very little about all of these guys, and it's likely that some of these names are actually the same person, like, you know, Mike or Tenna could be the Chapter 3 secret boss, the friend could be Mike, or Tenna, or the Chapter 3 secret boss. We just don't know, which again is why I'm kind of just treating them as one entity for now. Going back to the Spamton sweepstakes and wandydoodles tweet, the section about the speaker forgetting who they were helping could connect to the page with the Ice Palace maze. The page title reads, "Aren't you forgetting something?" which would seem to imply that the voice on the page title is speaking to the voice from the letter, asking them that question. It could also be more of like a general line, like it's not supposed to be dialogue from a character, but more like narration about the letter speaker, or even them like talking to themselves, like their brain being like, "Aren't you forgetting something?" But I feel like that isn't really Toby's style. I don't know. Especially considering that the page title is in all caps, something which, you know, Spamton and Jevil also have. It seems likely that it is from a character. I don't really know what to add on to this, but I suppose that that could be evidence that the letter is actually from Gaster and that someone associated with him is asking him this question. Or it could be the opposite. It could be that the letter is from someone associated with Gaster, and it's Gaster who's, you know, asking them, "Aren't you forgetting something?" I don't know. wandydoodles also brings up the friend sprite found in the basement of Queen's Mansion. This sprite is named image_friend, which is the naming convention used for files seemingly related to Gaster and the program itself. I'm not going to get into all that here, but, you know, you can look it up or watch Molly Starr's Device Theory if you want to know more about that. But this friend sprite is also likely the same thing as the eyes from the sweepstakes, which again show up on the "But what if it could get darker than dark" page. So all of that would imply a connection between this friend and Gaster. Therefore, it would make sense that this letter could be from whoever this friend is. The letter has connections to Gaster because the person who wrote it has connections to Gaster, even if they aren't a secret boss, or Mike, or Tenna, or whoever. The one thing I'm hung up on is, again, the direct mention of Deltarune, but if this isn't a variation of Gaster, then the idea that it's someone related to Gaster, someone he even possibly considers a friend, would line up with the phrasing of this letter. The speaker is clearly aware of Deltarune and our connection to it, but seems to not be quite as familiar with us personally, judging from how they approach asking us for help, as if they haven't really interacted with us before. wandydoodles also points out that the letter speaker seems to not really understand how time works in our world, judging from the comment in the very beginning about, you know, Happy New Year, or was it the old year? They seem to not really know how that works, while Gaster has always seemed very aware of that kind of thing. I mean, if his comments referencing COVID in the Chapter 2 announcement tweets is anything to go by. But all of that would make sense if this was not Gaster himself, but a friend of his who's heard of us. But it's hard to be entirely sure about any of this. That is basically all I have to say for now. So, that was a lot. Talking about anything Gaster related often feels like chasing shadows, which honestly is probably pretty accurate. I feel like I'm going insane. Anyways, despite my initial thoughts, I do think the most likely option is that this isn't Gaster, but rather someone connected to him, likely someone who knew him more than Jevil or Spamton ever did, enough to be aware about Deltarune's existence. Before I go, I do want to give yet another shout out to wandydoodles on Twitter. I didn't want to go too in-depth with the theorizing in this video, but he has a fantastic thread about this letter and Mike. I would have gone over it in this video, but I would have just been repeating word for word his thread, so go check it out if you want more details on that theory. I will link it in the description, along with all the other tweets that I referenced in this video. And now, it's time for the actual outro. Like I said before, I was not expecting to make another video this soon, but then Toby gave us whatever the heck this is, and I could not stay silent. This is still very new information as of me making this video, so I'd love to know what your thoughts are on who this could be and what it could mean for the future of Deltarune. I will say that going from just lightheartedly refreshing the newsletter and scanning Twitter to see all of the different valentines to getting sucker punched with possible Gaster stuff and then comboed with the letter disappearing minutes afterward was an insane experience and just goes to show that when new chapters come out, I will not be able to handle it. Please get me off Toby Fox's crazy ride. Anyways, that's all from me for now. Feel free to subscribe. Goodbye!